my name is Rinjo. I'm here today with Mr. Logan, who is the founder and CEO of RocketSpace, which is a co-working accelerator based out of the beautiful city of San Francisco. As you can see the view in the background, it is actually a real view. The North America Blockchain Association is very fortunate to have Mr. Logan with us here today. I guess I would just start with something simple. Can you tell the audience a bit about yourself? What inspired you to start RocketSpace?
Sure. So I have a passion for technology. I was born in Scotland, but the first 12 years of my working career was in London, where I was fortunate to be part of a security technology business there. We sold that business to Symantec, and I moved over to Silicon Valley in 2008. When I got here, I realized that people just think differently here in the Valley. It's just on a whole different level. And even though we built a very successful company back in the UK, it was just mesmerizing at the different approach Silicon Valley takes to building these unicorns, these fast growth companies. So the concept for RocketSpace was really to be a sort of Harvard for tech, this very high quality focused area where we would get lots of different entrepreneurs to come and build their companies while surrounded by each other. We fundamentally believe that a young company is highly influenced by its surroundings. It's very hard to build an innovation company in isolation. It's much easier when you're surrounded by lots of other companies doing great things as well. And so that was the original concept back in 2011, and obviously the results have been pretty staggering.
And you believe that startups or people are products of their environments, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and one of the things that the Silicon Valley is not lack of is accelerators and the incubators. Of course, startups, the ecosystem in general. How do you view RocketSpace in a competitive landscape, and how do you think RocketSpace can help entrepreneurs, startups, and venture capital firms?
Yeah, so very good question, because there's over 100 co-working spaces or shared office spaces here in San Francisco alone. Right from day one, RocketSpace was really focused on, firstly, technology, and then the quality end of technology. We actually say no to far more companies than ever get into RocketSpace, because we're really looking for a very specific type of entrepreneur and company, venture-backed company, to come into RocketSpace. And we just believe that there's nothing against people who want to build a lifestyle business or just a company, but people who want to build a company that's going to have 100 million users or more is a very specific sort of mindset and person. And so we actively hunt for those sort of companies in their sort of post-seed stage, seed to C stage funding, and then look at how do we remove friction to help those companies be successful. So we're not a volume play in that we're looking for just more members and seats. It's really focused on very specific type companies, which we can then help with our connections into the ecosystem to venture capitalists, to corporates and other people to help those companies scale.
Okay. As far as my knowledge goes, it seems to me that RocketSpace has a huge focus on industries such as information technology, logistics, etc.
Yeah.
And I assume that you have certain interest in blockchain. As you are sitting with us here today, you've accepted to do this with NABA. So what makes blockchain attractive to you?
So I think we see technology kind of moves in waves, and having over 150 startups on campus here, we see those waves coming through. So an easy one would be the sort of daily deals. When Groupon was big, we saw a lot of companies working on daily deal sites, and we now see those waves coming through in IoT and augmented reality, virtual reality, deep learning, artificial intelligence, and blockchain. And blockchain is just, the interesting thing of blockchain is it's actually a new platform which enables a whole new way of thinking for a lot of traditional problems. A lot of, it's this distributed network, which has huge benefits for a lot of systems. It removes the power from oligopolies or monopolistic practices in certain industries. And just as a technologist, I kind of love the fact that distributed power means fewer people can control things, and therefore the industry will move quicker. So obviously blockchain started, it became most famous around Bitcoin and around a currency, but I think where I get more excited is where I'm seeing it being used in other industries which aren't so obvious, and certainly away from the currency aspect.
Nice. So you touched upon, other industries, for example, IoT and augmented reality, things like that. Those are also the hot topics nowadays.
Sure.
You know that blockchain started in mostly the banking and financial services area, and then nowadays people are talking about the combination of those new fields, such as IoT plus blockchain, blockchain plus energy, blockchain plus some other traditional industries such as insurance as well. So where do you think blockchain, the next big breakthrough will be coming from, and where do you think the technology will be headed in the next maybe 3 to 5 years?
Wow, really, really good question. I think when you discuss a distributed ledger, when you talk about ledgers, the most, you think about accounting, and therefore you head to currency. And I think that was an obvious starting point for blockchain, and the blockchain needed a proof of concept product to get it out there as a platform. And Bitcoin, I think has done a really good job of getting the blockchain out there. But I think we're still at the tip of the iceberg for where the other areas where you could use that distributed ledger. And I can think of a very good example I've seen recently where food fraud is a very big problem, where you think you're buying organic Scottish salmon, and it's not organic and it's not Scottish. And there's a company out there, ArtNet, who is using the blockchain to eradicate food fraud, so that when you're paying a premium for that product, that it actually is that product, and you can follow it through the blockchain to its source. That is not an obvious use of a distributed ledger, but it works perfectly because there's no ability to go back in and change the record. Once the record's put in, once the salmon is born in Scotland and that record is put in, the DNA is put into the blockchain, nobody can go back and change that. Exactly. No matter how big you are. And so that's a fantastic use of using a distributed ledger to prevent fraud later down the system. Obviously that's happening in diamonds and art and all sorts of other things, and we're speaking to real estate companies about escrow and all these other sort of trust systems that can come around that. So I think it's still super early, and I think we will just it's a little bit like the cloud, cloud computing. You say, well, what would cloud computing be really useful for? And you say, well, people with big database, big data or big processing power, and then you start going, well, actually, it just works everywhere. And I think that's what we'll see with blockchain. We will probably interact with the blockchain, dozens of times a day in our everyday life, and we just won't realize it. It's just a recording mechanism.
The food fraud application, I feel that this is very innovative. So is it something that, is that one of the characteristics that as an industry veteran, you have tremendous experience evaluating startups and their teams. So are these, the kind of characteristics that you are looking for when you are making investments? And I'm sure the audience would also be interested in knowing what are the characteristics and what are the tools, the metrics that you will be eyeing on in the evaluation.
I think wherever you can imagine a 100% trust system would be a really useful thing. that's a good place to start for blockchain. Now, a company could say, well, we'll be 100% honest and we'll be totally honest and you just have to believe us, but we can sort out this industry. That's one way of going it, but I think society just doesn't believe that now. Whether it's governments or large corporations or, you know, our society has been infected by people assuming the entity will do whatever is right for them. And, you know, whether that's a politician, and I think we're seeing that, or whether that's a large corporate, there is no such thing as kind of 100% honesty and therefore 100% trust. And I think that's where a distributed system helps bring in that efficacy around a system. So you no longer say, trust us. You can now say, well, you don't need to trust us. We're going to use the blockchain, and everyone knows you cannot go back and change. You know, once something's in there, it's very hard to defraud that system. So I think it moves us from where we would, you know, where we would put huge amounts of trust into a company. So with a drug company, where we would say, well, we're going to trust that drug company that it's you know, it's distributing a perfect product and it's not harmful and all the rest of it. People are getting more suspicious about that. So now they're saying, okay, or it's not the drug company that's deliberately doing something wrong. It's just somebody's infiltrated their supply chain, and you don't know if you're buying, you know, this pill, whether it's genuinely made by the drug company or whether it's a fraudulent pill. That is where that sort of fraud can come, you know, be removed using something like the blockchain. And I think we will expect to see that in everything. That you know, if I buy a BMW car, I can check that it has actually come from BMW. If I buy a packet of shampoo, not that I would, but I know it's come from the original manufacturer and it hasn't been fraudulently added to the supply chain at some point. So I think it will become into every part of our life.
Yeah. So that's the original idea for NABA. When we founded this nonprofit organization, there was an article in Economist back then, and they call blockchain the trust machine.
Yep.
So that's why we would like to distribute this idea, you know, to encourage the trust and also build a platform for entrepreneurs, for startups, for, you know, accelerators like RocketSpace to be able to connect with each other to contribute to the prosperity of technology. So before we conclude this interview, would you like to add anything to our, you know, to the audience?
I think it's really interesting that you say blockchain is the trust machine, because I think if we look back at the internet, we'd say it's the copy machine. You know, the internet has enabled us all to work on and find out and copy other ideas that work here, either geo copy or product copy across into other things. And what the internet did break down was that trust angle. So this is maybe a kind of important layer to bring trust back into the internet and back into the digital world, which was removed. But I think as a final thought, you know, all of these, I can remember studying the blockchain 4, 5, 6 years ago, and it just wasn't clear on how it would be adopted into major society. And it you know, at first you speak to people and say, oh, it's just a gimmick, and then it kind of becomes a fad, and then it becomes the new norm. And we see that in technology waves the whole time, is that gradually, as it goes through that acceptance curve, it becomes the new norm. And I think blockchain will become the new norm to so many, you know, as I say, dozens of times a day, you will interact with the blockchain without knowing it, but it will give you more assurance around what you're doing or what you're using, and I think that's going to be a fantastic thing. So I think you're onto a good industry. I think it's going to be a very big industry, and we're still very early in its adoption.
Thank you. All right, this is Junzhou from NABA San Francisco. Thank you very much for watching. See you next time.